One.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of The Grid. We're in week 5 of the playoffs, and we now have 2 teams left. I'm Mike Forman, joined as always by Ray Castillo. We're going to talk a little bit about last week. We lost a couple of teams last week, and then we'll get into this week's semifinal games. First of all, looking back at last week, I guess we should start with Thursday night. Refugio took care of business against Holland, and the Bobcats took care of business in a hurry. I mean, first play from scrimmage, Holland fumbles. Jordan Kelly recovers, the Bobcats score, and they scored on their first 4 possessions. And while they were doing that, they limited Holland to 1 first down. So they just took control of that game. I got the feeling in that game that Holland, the bright lights of the Alamo Dome kind of affected Holland a little bit. Did you get that sense? You were down on the field?
Yeah, definitely. And, looking into that game, I thought it was going to be a lot closer, but boy, was I wrong. You look at what Holland was able to do all year defensively, and for Refugio to come out and score like that, it was just really impressive.
Right, because Holland had not given up more than 19 points in the game, and then their Refugio scores 28 in the first quarter. So amazing. And I know that Coach Herring and his staff there at Refugio worked very hard to put together that game plan because they were doing it on a short week. And what's even more impressive, I think, is they're coming off that big emotional win over Shiner. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to put those 2 performances like that back to back. But they were able to do it. And then we moved to Friday night, and that was kind of not a good night for the area. Yeah. I mean, Fall City did win, but first let's talk about the game you covered, Hallettsville against Columbus, a team they had beaten earlier in the year.
Yeah, the Hallettsville came away with a close win the first time, but the second time it was all Tyree Simsek, the running back from Columbus. He was all over the place. He rushed for 289 yards, and they just didn't have an answer for him. Coach Pensa gave a lot of credit, to him and the offensive line. Both those guys were big, and that really made it easy for Tyree. I'll give him credit though, and Jonathan Brooks, their leading rusher, he did score 3 touchdowns, but it just wasn't enough. It was they dug a hole early, and it was hard to get out of it. A lot of big plays from Tyree. Every time in the first half, it seemed like Hallettsville was going to get right back in it. He would score a touchdown. He finished with 5 touchdowns.
Wow.
And it was just what a great season overall by Hallettsville to reach the quarterfinals, despite their numbers being so low.
In fact, someone said to me they felt like Hallettsville just kind of ran out of gas. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense with such a small roster.
Yeah,
it's very difficult. And let's face it, that's a problem that's going to be ongoing because once again, Hallettsville, Industrial will have the same problem too. Both Hallettsville and Industrial will be 2 of the smallest schools in 3A Division I, and that makes it difficult because no matter what anybody says, numbers do matter in football. Because you need the depth to play well. The other game where we lost a team was Ganado. Tyler covered that game against East Bernard, the rematch. 2 things here. East Bernard's perennial good team. They run the slot T, always efficient, play good defense. So, and they'd beaten Ganado earlier in the season. And Tyler also, he told me after covering the game that he felt like the bright lights kind of affected Ganado, which is understandable. I mean, it had been a while since the Indians had been in a situation like that.
Yeah, Ganado, just another team that just, had some big wins to get to where they were from the start of the season. And, they did accomplish a lot. You look at the teams they were able to beat, some really good teams that were not undefeated, had a loss. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate they had to come to an end, but like you said, Mike, East Bernard is just a tough opponent.
Right, and Coach Brent Bennett did a tremendous job in his first season at Ganado, and the thing about it is they're only going to get better, I think, because they have a freshman quarterback, and he's got his offense in, and the players will be more used to it next season. So, the future looks bright there. And the team we did have that came out with a win was the Fall City Beavers. That was a really good game with an incredible performance by Brady Lissy. I mean, he did about everything. I mean, he rushed for 356 yards, all 5 touchdowns. Just, just a tough, hard-nosed runner there, and you got to give credit to that offensive line. Fall City, I mean, there were a couple of those plays where he had some really big holes to run through. So, really a good performance by the Beavers, and we also had we had a state champion crowned last week on Saturday, actually. Shiner St. Paul back to back beat their rival, Hallettsville Sacred Heart. A really good game. It was close. It came down in the fourth quarter. You know, it's kind of weird. Those two teams have to go all the way up to near Waco to play a game that probably they could have gone over to, you know, Yoakum or Cuero or somewhere and played with a lot less travel, probably a bigger crowd. But still, all in all, another great job by Coach Walksmith. He just seems to get those teams to where they're playing their best football at the end of the year. I mean, they take some losses early in the year, but by the time district rolls around and they get in the playoffs, the Cardinals are playing good football.
Yeah, the third championship in the last 4 years for St. Paul, and like you said, they came from behind. They trailed at halftime, and they were able to come away with a victory. Just a hard-fought win, and just a tough loss for Sacred Heart.
Right, and now let's turn our attention to this week, the semifinals. Thursday night, first game is a Refugio going up against San Augustine. This is a rematch, kind of the 2017 semifinals. Refugio handled San Augustine in that. Couple of keys here for the Bobcats. One, I think, is defensively is the big key, is to prevent as many big plays as possible. St. Augustine's quarterback and their running back exceptionally fast, have a lot of yardage, and they have a lot of breakaway speed. So the Bobcats have to contain that speed. If they're able to do that, I think they'll be okay, because St. Augustine has given up a lot of points, and I think Refugio should be able to score on St. Augustine. The key for the Bobcats to go back to the state final will be to contain that speed, like I said, and limit St. Augustine's scoring opportunities.
Right, and just continue to, you know, stay focused. We mentioned the, you know, not getting carried away, like whether it was the Shiner win, and you know, still staying ready. And you know, so I think Jason Herring will have them ready.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Herring spoke about this to me. I mean, you're so close. You know that. I mean, you're playing on Thursday, and the state finals on Wednesday, so you can really just see it right there in front of you. But you have to win this game to get there, and you know, you're playing an undefeated team. I mean, regardless of who they played or what they played, they're undefeated. So, but I'll say this about this Refugio team: it's done a good job of focusing. And the other thing is, we've seen with Shiner and Mart. Refugio has shown the ability to come from behind, so that's a good sign too. And then moving on to our other semifinal game, this is a rematch from last year, where we have Fall City and defending state champion Mart. And having seen Mart against Refugio, I can tell you right now they're as talented as they've ever been. This year they have 3 losses. And I think the reason for those 3 losses is they played good opponents. One of them was Refugio, one's Holland. I think the other one came to maybe Franklin or someone. But they have a very young team, and they took those losses early in the year. But once they get into district and were playing teams, you know, Mart's size, Mart was just killing people. And they did it again last week in the quarterfinals. So Fall City played last year, and you know, they were close for 3 quarters. In fact, they went into the fourth quarter down 7 points, but then Mart exploded on them. The key for Fall City, I think, is that they are going to have to control the ball behind that big offensive line and eat up the clock, and just keep it out of Mart's hand. and they can't turn it over. Last year they had 2 critical turnovers. And Mart actually fumbled a couple times last year, but Mart never turned it over. They got back on their own fumble, which was a big thing. But, I think Fall City says this may be their best opportunity in a while to beat Mart.
Yeah, and they got the team to do it, like you said, the experience and this incredible run that they made with Coach Hart. And, man, let's see if he can continue to play the way he's played.
Just
that makes all the difference.
Yeah,
especially with the offense.
I know people, they'll say, well, this is Class A Division II, but I'm gonna tell you what, Brady Lissy could play on any level. He's good enough, and he's quite athletic. He's a hurdler. He's a pole vaulter. I mean, he's just a great athlete, and he's also a very intelligent player, which is really important, and he'll show that. Now, looking at the bright side, hopefully, if Refugio and Fall City wins, Refugio would play its state final game on Wednesday night. That'd be at 7 p.m. at AT&T Stadium. And Fall City, if it advances, would play the Thursday morning game. That's at 11. So it'd be kind of, in a way, kind of back-to-back. But, of course, you just want to get there. Of course, Refugio has won 4 state titles. Fall City has 1. So both of them have been in the position where they've won state championships, so it's not. And as always, the next 2 nights for coverage of the Refugio and the Fall City games, follow us on Twitter, and we'll keep up with it on Advo Sports. And of course, you can read about it online at advosports.com and in the e-edition. And of course, you can read about it in, I guess, will be one of the last grids of the season.
Yeah.
But we'll keep you informed on that, and hopefully we'll be back with a state final edition of the grid next week.